Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and we are the segment where we take a deep dive into our main conversation for this morning. Today, we are looking at the significance of the Eid al-Fitr, and in the last 30 days, Muslims have lived a life of self-denial, refraining from negative conduct and other acts that run contrary to the teaching of Islam. Ramadan is a period when Muslims seek closer ties with Allah through diverse acts of worship, including almsgiving, recitation of the Holy Quran, observance of prayers at night, and seeking forgiveness of their sins. The holy month of Ramadan has been a full month of spiritual lessons from which Muslims are expected to live according to the consecrated tenets of Islam. These include the virtues of charity, good neighborliness, honesty, sacrifice, tolerance, and forgiveness. As Muslim faithful in Nigeria join other Muslims worldwide to celebrate this year's Eid al-Fitr, thus marking the end of the holy month of Ramadan, this morning on Daybreak, we will be focusing on the lessons of Ramadan for a better society. But before we go deeper into the main discussion, we will be opening our phone lines for viewers to share some of the lessons learned from the holy month of Ramadan. I'm sure our guest here would be doing justice to that. We have in the studio Ustaz Ibrahim Idris, the Deputy Chief Imam and Director of Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society headquarters in Abuja, to further discuss more on the significance of the season and lessons from the holy month of Ramadan. Good morning, Ustaz.
Good morning.
Good morning. Barakah Sallah.
Barakah Sallah.
I'm tempted to say that it doesn't look like you had gone through a 30-day of fasting. So refreshed and how would I call it? Very hydrated.
It's part of the spirit. It's part of the spirit. Yes.
All right. Today is Eid. Like we said in our opening remarks, rounding up what has been 30 days of spiritual exercise. And as nature will have it this year, it also ran concurrently with the Christian fasting period at some point.
Certainly.
And tell us, how significant this annual spiritual ritual is, to both to us as Muslim faithful, but more importantly, to our nation, Nigeria.
Well, Alhamdulillah, the essence and significance of this fasting has already been encapsulated by the Quran, where Allah said, "O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed on even nations before you, so that you have God consciousness." So the most important thing is to have God's consciousness. Once you have that, you have every other thing put together. Patience, perseverance, compassion, caring for one another. These are some of the critical lessons in Ramadan. You restrain yourself from eating, from drinking, from other intimacy with the family, from sunset, from dusk to dawn. These are sacrifices the flesh need, but you totally boycott it. Number two, you raise the issue of charity. Especially in this nation, things are difficult. People are hungry. People need assistance. This constant sacrifice of giving charity is also one fundamental significance of the fasting. Number two is not just to restrain from hunger, thirst. No, you are involved in the recitation of the Quran. So there is spiritual reformation. You are also involved in long prayers in the night. These are all spiritual things, and they should translate to getting close to God. Because there is no point in just waking up, denying yourself food, denying yourself sleep, and that consciousness is not in there. So these are some of the significant things in Ramadan, and that should be carried along in other months after Ramadan.
Yeah. And in looking at how during Ramadan, for instance, across the Muslim community, there's the religiosity or spirituality is turbocharged because of the blessings of this particular month. What are some of your thoughts about how Muslims could sustain this momentum beyond Ramadan? Because someone jokingly posted something on Twitter, the day before, said, those people who were, fresh attendees of the various congregational prayers, their passing out parade was yesterday. So the regular attendance will go back to normal after the Ramadan fast, because most of them would stop because, Ramadan is over. What are some of your recommendations about how people can stay in touch with the spirits, the teachings, and the values that Ramadan comes with beyond just this particular period?
You see, back to what I said earlier, the essence of Ramadan is to get close to God. And really, I regard Ramadan as an institution where you go through, you learn, so that you can now pass or you can now implement some of these lessons. The tendency is for people to be hyperactive during Ramadan, to engage themselves in so much. And by the time Ramadan is over, they go back to ground zero. They can't make it. So, and this is not the lesson. وَلَا تَحْكِرَنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ شَيْئًا. Don't belittle any good thing you do in life. And if you can do 10 rakats or you can devote the whole night, then after Ramadan, take some hours, take some 30 minutes even, and continue with it. Don't go below zero level. So these are some of the lessons, not only in the spiritual aspect, even in this charity. You have 10,000 naira and your neighbor doesn't have anything, has not even eaten for the day. Why can't you sacrifice 1,000 or 2,000 out of it? And this will continue. When I say neighbor, I don't mean Muslim neighbor. Neighbor generally, Muslims, Christians, even those without religion. That compassion, that humanity should be in you. You didn't do anything special that God provided for you, that 10,000 or whatever. Therefore, have that compassion. I had a gist with a friend, a reverend father yesterday. I said, I'm inviting you to my house tomorrow. Come and share with me. Because you just finished Easter, although we also met the Ramadan. The Ramadan met part of the Easter. But that togetherness will bring unity, will bring understanding, will bring harmony in the society and the nation at large. So these are some of the wonderful lessons we must learn in this Ramadan and extend it beyond Ramadan.
I like the way you're re-emphasizing how you invited the Reverend Father, and I'm saying this for obvious reasons. The people who have not invited me, I hope you're taking note. Ustaz has set the pace for what should be the minimum standard. There is no complaint about whether it's a chicken salah or it's a ram salah or it's not a ram salah. That's not the benchmark for us. But taking this further into nation building, year after year, we talk about how much Nigeria, for instance, is a religious nation. And we see that every time each of the two major religions have got, rituals to perform. You see the level of adherence and all of that. But we then find it difficult to migrate the lessons into daily living. You cannot explain how much of brazen sheer wickedness we see in terms of leadership, completely disconnecting with their followers. We were talking this morning about the number of Al-Majris roaming our streets. And he said something that struck this morning, as if I've never heard it before. He said these children did not fall from the moon. Some adults in their right senses woke up and got engaged in acts that brought these children to earth, and thereafter we pretend as if we don't have any responsibility to these people. How can we begin to appropriate the teachings of our religion in, for instance, in our leadership recruitment, in fighting corruption, and in holding leadership accountable to its responsibility?
Well, Alhamdulillah, a very difficult task because of the nature and complexities of Nigeria. Number one, population. Number two, just as you say, no proper planning. Government side, the citizen side, and those involved in decision making. But there's always hope. Number one, what we used to say as a religious country, we must pray and pray and pray over this. But beyond prayer, honestly, there must be some decisive action that must be taken. Number one, on the leaders, they must be decisive. And when I mean decisive, not only in taking decision, but keeping faith to such decisions. Because there is no point in you taking decisions, reeling out laws, and without implementation. Or you have a dual society when some will obey the law and some will feel they are above the law. Number two, the clergy, the Christian leaders, the Muslim leaders must keep to the truth, say the truth. Of course, let them support the government. Whenever there are good programs and projects, let them encourage their followers to understand and appreciate what government is doing. But whenever the government errs or deviate, the leaders should be firm. There is no point in a religious leader shouting hula 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 just to support the government because of some little token given to him, or maybe carried on pilgrimage, or supported by one project or constituency, or some amount of money going to him, and that's all. He turns blind eyes to what is really happening in the society. This, I don't subscribe to it. I call on my religious leaders, Christians, Muslims, to tell the government as it is when the chips are down. We must emphasize this. We must stand by the truth. We must be with the masses rather than compromise our stance on issues of nation building. Abo, thank you.
Just to double down on that particular point about the virtues, the lessons, and the expectations. We talked about charitable donations throughout the month, and we've seen so many people, I mean, even state governments, to the consternation of most people, were stepping in to provide feeding, which is just tied to the month of Ramadan. But beyond that also, Islamically, Muslims who are well-to-do are expected, and well-to-do, I use that word loosely, expected to give zakat this morning before the Eid prayers. Just shed light on the significance of zakat al-fitr, what it means, and what people need to know about what they need to do.
Right, zakat al-fitr is a very strong sunnah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam emphasized on it. And quickly, two significance on zakat al-fitr. One, to provide the needy on what to eat on that day. Agnuhum anis su'ali fi hadha al-yawm. Provide for them so that they don't go about begging on that day. Number two, this zakat al-fitr has some spiritual connotation. It erases, it cleans off some of the little mistakes one will have done in the month of Ramadan. Not big sins. If you go and do big sins in Ramadan, you are on your own. Because even the devils are chained in Ramadan. So if you want to prove you are more than the devil, you go and commit big sins, you are on your own. But minor mistakes, probably shortcomings, little language. Sometimes we utter things unknowingly. These are the things the Zakat al-Fitr used to do to cleanse. So you can see both spiritual and social or economic Zakat al-Fitr has. And that's why Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam emphasized it must be given a day or at least on the morning so that the person can quickly prepare and also feed. What the Prophet doesn't want to see is people moving around begging for what to eat on that day. And that's the emphasis. So translating this to the nation is a place where people should pour out, should give, should even look for who are those in need, not for you to stay at home and people will come and line up waiting for you as zakat al-fitr. No. Go search for this, and there are genuine hungry people who may not even utter or complain that they are hungry. Look for them, support them, give them, and even add additional nafila on top. You give him 5 mudus for his family, give him 2,000, 3,000 to buy the little tomato and oil to prepare for it. Let them be comfortable on that day.
Do you think that urbanization, as we see today in Nigeria, is beginning to impact heavily on some of these teachings of religion? I remember growing up in one little Kwangila area of Mina, with my Muslim brothers, of course, not far from the location of the current central mosque around Limawa. And I mean, on a day like this, you see the camaraderie amongst people who live around. You see, even those of us who are Christians, I got several gifts because I lived around people who do these local knittings for clothes. I mean, I also got, in fact, they nicknamed me Ladi. rather than Sunday, which is my traditional name,
Right.
because it's easier for them to call and remember and all of that. But I mean, as we grew up and moved into cities as we currently know them, some of these values disappear. We have people living, I mean, the whole concept of congregational living have also disappeared. Of course, largely because some persons have also abused the privilege that have been made open to them. But what has happened to that whole, practice that used to accompany a day like this and all of, because they seem to be going out of fashion as it appears.
Quite unfortunate, very unfortunate. That we learned 30, 40 years back is closer to the practice of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 3 things he does on Eid day. He comes out, attend to the general congregational prayer, 2 rakats. The next, he moves to the women's section in that prayer ground, addresses them, encourages them, give them hope. And the next is to go back to his residence and receive leaders of other religions. These are the 3 basic things Prophet Muhammad does. And no discrimination. He entertains, he feasts with them. Now, coming to those 30, 20, 25 years ago, I remember as a neighbor in Kaduna, I have Baba Michael and his children, Michael and others. I have one Igbo man by my right. We bring out the food. We sit down in a cycle. Touch this, touch that, chin chin as you were expecting this morning, the little chicken, we eat. You don't even discriminate which plate is from whose house. You join together and you are happy. We play around, we discuss issues. This urbanization now is drifting these wonderful legacies far back. Insecurity, fear. You are not even sure who your neighbor is. These are virtues we must revisit in our lives. These are things that unite us together. These are things that will give us prosperity. God is conscious of assisting one another. There are some rhetorical questions we are told Allah will ask on the day of judgment. I was hungry and you didn't provide for me. I was thirsty and you didn't provide for me. I was clothless and you didn't. I was shelterless and you didn't provide shelter for me. And we'll ask rhetorically also, Ya Allah, how can you be thirsty? How can you be hungry? How can you be clothless? Say, yes, my dear servant was thirsty, hungry, clothless, and you didn't attend to him when you have. If you had gone to give him that, you would have met my presence there.
Interesting.
And do you think,
before you make your thoughts, I just wanted to say that what he said, for those of us who are conversant with the Bible, has a complete direct translation in the Bible. The stories are told in the same manner, the same circumstances, and you recall it has even been made into a song where you hear them say, whatever you do to the least of my brother, that you do unto me.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, your faith is not complete if you don't, want the same well-being for your brother. But in also, just to harp on that point, because more often than not we focus on the celebrations and forget about the teachings that allows us to reflect on the state of affairs in this country, right? Nigeria is predominantly Muslim and Christian, right? And for so many years we've asked ourselves, if we're truly a religious people, we shouldn't be where we are right now, dealing with insecurity, dealing with this level of poverty, in the midst of all this abundance of wealth. We have some of the richest people on the continent, some of the richest people in the world. We're one of the most blessed nations on planet Earth. But yet again, we have the largest number of poor people living in poverty, dealing with all these difficulties on a day-to-day basis. What do you want to say to the people across the religious divide about translating our spirituality into good deeds that changes our livelihood as a nation, for instance?
Well, Allah said in the Holy Quran, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. I swear by the time, man generally is in a state of loss, except those who believe, who do good work, who admonish people to the truth, and who admonish people to be patient. This is, in fact, one of the scholars say, if it is only this chapter that is revealed in the Quran, it suffices living together. Why do I say this? That humanity in us. I was with a Reverend Father yesterday, I still insist, and he said, and I believe, that God has his own image in man. Therefore, we are supposed to be godly, be patient, be truthful, be accommodating, be compassionate. We find ourselves in a society where people are greedy, selfish, personalizing even resources that belong to the entire, personalizing it. This is where the division is. And unless and until we backtrack and consider mine for everybody and yours for everybody, we will continue to go deep into this mess we find ourselves.
All right. I wish we had time to continue to, take deeper dives into the significance and the lessons of today's, global celebration. But I'm sorry, we may have to anchor here, and to apologize to you for denying you the opportunity to be at the Eid ground this morning.
Also part of Eid prayer.
We have been talking with Ustaz Ibrahim Idris, the Deputy Chief Imam and the Director of Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society headquarters in Abuja. It's a pleasure to once again have you in the studio. And as part of our own commitment, time to time we'll be taking a look at, the interface between religion and morality in our society. And I'm sure when we come calling again, you would oblige us in a future date. And that's the much that we can bring to you on this segment. Newspaper Review comes up next.